I've made a few different videos on the long-term effects of ADHD medicines, and I want to make this video because I think some people are misunderstanding what the point of those videos are. Very often in the comments section it sort of devolves into two camps. You have one camp that basically will see something like that and say, well, I know it, there's no reason that anyone should ever take these, or it's always bad 100% of the time. And then there's the other camp where they think that if it's prescribed to them and they have ADD, that there can never be any long-term effects for those people because they're the right person. And both of those are false. So what I'm going to do is explain in a non-technical way what the point I was trying to get across there. And I think this non-technical explanation is going to help a lot of people better understand what the point of it was. The first point I want to get across is that medicines are tools. A tool is a tool. It's neither good nor bad. If you think of something like amputation, is that good or bad? In most people it's going to be bad. But if you've got sepsis and you're going to die and it's not recoverable, then it's good. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that you're not going to have trouble walking after you get foot amputated. The second point is that nobody knows how these drugs work. No idea. Nobody knows how they work. Nobody knows how even ADD works. The most common explanation you get is that it's a deficiency in dopamine, but there's no way to prove that. There's no test where you can show a decrease of dopamine in the areas of the brain that you're looking for. And some of the drugs don't even work on dopamine. So what does that mean? So it either could mean that there's multiple types like diabetes. It could mean that it's something completely different. Nobody knows. So don't know anything how the drugs work. Don't even know how ADD works. The drugs have lots of different effects. That's another theory. Maybe it's not dopamine. Maybe it's something else. But then you've got to think to yourself, well, what else could this drug be doing that we're not sure? And it's very difficult to measure because it's in someone's brain. So no idea. Even when you do have an idea, you're not really sure what the long-term effects of those are. Let's say there are certain drugs for ADD where there's a persistent decrease in dopamine receptors, and that is persistent even after the cell divides. So it's persistent through the daughter cells. There are long-term changes in mRNA expression. So I said I wasn't going to get too technical, but basically there are long-term changes that can happen. But what do those mean? Are those good or bad? No idea. There's no real way to measure any of this stuff. So people are basically, that's just unfortunately the way it is. But basically there's just, hey, there's this drug, kind of does these random things. It might be this, might be that. But we don't really know what it does, and in some people it's shown to help. There's a technical name for this kind of strategy. It's called button mashing, right? So when you're getting destroyed in a game, you might know one or two buttons, but you don't know any of the special moves. So what you do is you kind of point yourself in this direction and just mash a bunch of buttons, and sometimes that works. And essentially that's what this strategy is. Except you're not doing it in a game, you're doing it on your head. So let me give you an example here. Imagine you're on an airplane, or in a nuclear power plant, for example. You're at the control room or in the cockpit. Is button mashing a good idea? If I just go to a switch, and I have no idea how any of this stuff works, I just hit a bunch of switches, is that generally going to be a good or a bad idea? Maybe some of these switches just flick on a light on and off, and it doesn't really do anything. Maybe it damages the nuclear core. Maybe something heats up or it damages the engine, or I crash into the ground, right? A lot of different outcomes. But if I don't know what I'm doing, it's probably not a good idea just to start flipping random switches, right? Now imagine I was trying to do something, right? Maybe I'm in an airplane and I want to get somewhere faster, right? Maybe I know how a couple of the switches work. I know this, right? That makes it go faster or slower. But what about the landing gear? Well, I don't know where that is, so I'm going to have to button mash for that. Maybe I saw a movie and it's up there somewhere. So I could button mash for that, but it's risky, right? So it's the same. So as far as the strategy of button mashing goes, probably not a good idea if you just want to get somewhere a little bit faster, right? Probably not worth button mashing. Now, if your plane is on fire and it's already crashing into the ground, then imagine this, right? If you button mash and you're just trying to get somewhere a little bit faster, there are a lot of more things that can go wrong, right? Maybe one of those switches causes me to crash into the ground. But if I'm button mashing and I'm already crashing into the ground, my plane's on fire, well, that switch that would have caused me to go into the ground, I'm already going down anyway, so that is not really a negative outcome. So you kind of see what, so that's kind of the general principle as far as when people take medicines and they don't know how they work, right? And there's this button mashing type strategy. You're trying to put yourself in people are trying to put themselves in a situation where, hopefully there are more good outcomes than bad outcomes. But that's kind of what you should think about when you're considering these kinds of things. What are you trying to get out of it, and what are the risks? What are the bad things that could happen? Now, these medicines are relatively safe as far as you're probably not going to die from it. I mean, it's sort of like button mashing with an airplane on the ground. But maybe you dump some fuel, maybe you damage one of the engines, and that could be a problem long term. But fortunately for airplanes, you can fix those. With this, you can't fix that. My third point is that even if it were proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that it has negative effects on, let's say, total capacity, whether it be memory or intelligence or creativity or emotions or whatever it is, right? Nobody knows how these work, so hard to say, right? But let's assume that it is proven. So what? It's a trade, right? And that's really the point that we're trying to get across in those videos, is that in anything that you do, there's always a trade, right? Positive for negative, okay? And if you're operating at like 20%, right, you're never going to 100%, or there might be a little flash, right? You spend maybe like one day a year at 100%. Well, it would be a very good trade to trade 10% to be able to operate consistently at 70%, right? That would be great. I have a feeling that a lot of people that watch this are younger too, and what you're going to find in life is that consistency is far more important than maximum capacity for almost anything. Even the really hard problems, a lot of people look at like the scientists and stuff that are brilliant. Honestly, a lot of the most brilliant people didn't really accomplish that much. They might have done a couple things, but they were very inconsistent, right? The people that were really hard workers and just kept going at it day after day after day, those are the people that made a difference. Consistency is more important than ability. But we definitely want to get across here that there is a trade here, but it doesn't necessarily mean it is always bad. But you have to make that evaluation, right? That's why you go to a medical professional. And that's the main reason why people are opposed to it. Medical professionals know about the long-term effects of these drugs. They go to school, right? They understand, right? It's just like, you see the studies, and they understand, right, that a lot of these things are hard to know definitively. We're never going to know, right? It's very hard to cut open someone's head and just look in there and see what's going on. So you've got to use your best judgment. And most of the time when people are hesitant to prescribe this stuff, it's not that they're looking at you like you're an addict, right? These don't have that strong of an addiction potential, right? It's mainly that, it's button mashing. That's what it comes down to, right? If you're on a plane, does it make sense, and you're just trying to get there, half an hour earlier on an 8-hour flight, does it make sense to button mash? I don't know. That's up to you to decide. But that's basically the point that we're trying to get across in these videos, is that, here is what is known about them, and here is what theoretically could happen, right? And that's up to you to make a determination. If you're making this determination on your own, you should ask yourself, going back to the airplane example, would you be willing to fly an airplane based on the research that you've done? And if you are, great. Or go camping out in the wilderness based on some videos you watched. I would hazard a bet that most of the time it's not going to turn out well if you do that, right? But that's basically what you're doing. And realize that an airplane or any of these other these very complicated machines and processes, this is way more complicated than that ever could be. No one knows how this works. Everyone, those machines were made by people, right? So just don't forget that, and just be sure that you are looking at everything for your own situation. You ask yourself, did I try, did I try different methods to study? I mean, I'll give you one more example before I go. Athletics. probably most people have been on a team, or whether it be a soccer team or in martial arts or whatever it is, right? Exercising, it could be difficult to get into a rhythm, but assuming you're on a team and you have a coach and there's structure, you usually are pretty successful at it, right? But as soon as you're out of that environment, and a lot of people keep up with it, but that's where a lot of people fall off. Now, the people that fall off, do they have some kind of deficiency, right? Do they need steroids? Probably not, right? It's a matter of training. And what I would say is, just from my personal experience, is that most of the quality of the schools, especially in the United States, is extremely poor. Very, very poor. You don't know how to study. I passed school without ever opening a book. Never opened a book, right? Now, when you got into a situation where now you have to open books and study, you just don't have any training, right? Now, I'm not saying that's your situation, but you definitely want to leave no stone unturned. And then whenever you have, done whatever you need to do, you make the best decision. You shouldn't be afraid to go with one of these treatments if it's recommended and you think it's the best thing. But at the same time, you should be cautious. This is not like trying on a shirt and then taking it off, right? So I hope that I was able to clarify what the whole point of talking about these situations. It's not to drive people away. It's to make sure that people are informed so they can make the best decision for themselves. So I hope you find that helpful. Leave any comments, and I'll talk to you next time. Before I go, I want to mention our company, which is Sustain Meds. So what Sustain Meds is a company that helps people with coverage issues through their insurance and with high copays or high cost medicines. So for example, the other day we had someone that needed to take Adderall 3 times a day because they were becoming resistant to it, and their insurance would only pay for 2. And it was very expensive, so we were able to get it covered, cost reduced down to $10. So that's one example. Another example that would probably be related is Vyvanse. Often people have very large deductibles or high copays, or it's not covered. So if you've got one of these problems, contact us. Go to www.sustainmeds.com, fill out the contact form, and we'll see what we can do to help you. But I figured I'd throw that in there. I almost forgot. I'm really bad at self-promotion, but I'm going to be mentioning it now. The more people that we can help online, the more time I can devote to doing videos. So hopefully, we'll be able to help some people out there. So if you or anyone needs help with coverage or high costs on a medication, contact us and I'll see what we can do to help.